In this video, we're going to continue exploring what philosophy is. We've looked at the idea that philosophy is defined as a set of topics. We've looked at the idea that philosophy is defined by the jobs it does. And now we'll look at the idea that philosophy is defined by the methods that it deploys. And again, I want to draw the parallel with science here. You can think of science not as the collection of physics, chemistry, biology, and so on, not as that which sort of does a certain job, like investigates the nature of the world, but instead you can think of it as a set of methods that could lead to any kind of conclusions in principle, but that are specific and constrained, so not anything goes. Similarly, you can think of philosophy as a set of methods. Now, that raises the question, if you think of philosophy as a set of methods, what are those methods? And we're going to explore them here. So here's the basic idea. Philosophy is a set way of approaching any given topic. And as I said, you can compare that to thinking about science as a set way of approaching any given topic. So then what are the methods? Well, there's a variety of different methods that are central to philosophy. I'm going to focus on a couple of broad brushstrokes things. First, philosophy highly values clarity, which you achieve partly through a special focus on language, by focusing on being very careful about what you mean by what you say. And philosophy also deploys arguments as a central tool, and we'll talk about what those are, and uses logic as a central tool, and we'll talk about what that is. So first up, clarity. There's a really important distinction between two different ways of thinking about what clarity is. I like to call these the owner's manual versus service manual ways of thinking about clarity. Now, what I want you to think about is what an owner's manual does. An owner's manual, if you've ever looked at the owner's manual for a car, gives you a little bit of information about the car. Like it says, for example, if this light comes on the dashboard, it means that your gas tank is almost empty. If that light comes on the dashboard, it means that you need to take the car in for service, and so on and so forth. It might give you some minor instructions for how to do things, like it might say, for example, if the tire is flat, here's how you remove it and put on a spare. But by and large, it gives you some sort of general sense of what a car is like, but it doesn't tell you exactly how it works. You're not going to be able to build a car by looking at an owner's manual. By contrast, a service manual will allow you to build a car from the bottom up. It tells you exactly how every little bit of the car works. Now, there's a sense in which the owner's manual is much clearer than the service manual. Why? Because it's easy to understand. If you give me the owner's manual for a car, I can read through it and understand what it's saying. If you give me the service manual for a car, I'll be hopelessly lost because I'm not a mechanic. By contrast, there's a sense in which a service manual is much clearer, and it's this. The service manual tells you exactly how the darn thing works, whereas an owner's manual doesn't really tell you how it works. When we talk about philosophy aiming for clarity, we're talking about the kind of service manual sense of clarity. We're not saying it's sort of an easy process, it's a sort of easy general description of, this or that area. We're saying it tells you exactly how things work in this or that area. It aims for clarity in the sense that you could sort of build things from the bottom up. It tells you exactly how what you're investigating works. Now, the question becomes, how do you achieve clarity? Or more specifically, how does philosophy suggest you achieve clarity? And there's no set of rules, but I'm going to give you some sort of loose guidelines. One is this: be explicit. So say what you believe and why you believe it. And by say here, I don't just mean think, I mean say aloud. Put into language exactly what you think is true and why you think it's true. That's really important when doing philosophy, is to not leave anything implicit, not leave anything in the background unstated, or worse yet, on thought, but rather be entirely clear. Say, here is what I think, and here is why I think it. The why here, why you believe what you believe, gives the evidence for your belief, not the causes. And that's an important distinction which we'll come back to later, but the basic idea is pretty straightforward. When someone says, why do you believe what you believe? You could offer a causal explanation like, I got bonked in the head and I just started believing it. Or you could offer a rational explanation like, well, the evidence points in that direction. When we ask you to state why you believe what you believe, we're asking for evidence. So next up, and I'll say more about that later. Next up, If you want to be clear, identify your commitments. So don't just state why you believe what you believe and why you believe it. Also identify anything else you need to believe in order to believe what you believe. So, for example, if I say Jenny is my sister, and I believe that because my parents told me it's true, and she looks like me, and we think alike, and so on and so forth, and you say, are you done being clear? I'd say no, because I need to also identify commitments of the claim that Jenny is my sister. So, for example, it commits me to the claim that we share some DNA, or if she's an adoptive sister, that we share some parent at some point. And it commits me to the claim more obviously that Jenny is a sibling, and so on and so forth. So identify not just what you believe and why you believe it, but what else you must believe if you believe this thing. That's important because often when you believe one thing, it might seem reasonable enough, but then when you identify the commitments, you'll realize, oh, in order to believe this thing, which seems reasonable, I have to believe that thing, which doesn't seem so reasonable. Next, define your terms. So any terms that are central in your thinking, especially when your use of those terms doesn't precisely match ordinary uses of those terms, define them. Say, here's what they mean. Okay, so let's go through and sort of give a little elaboration here. So be explicit. Say what you believe and why you believe it, where the evidence states the evidence for your beliefs and not just the causes of them. So I already mentioned briefly what that means, but I just want to give a good, clear example. So suppose this person here says gorillas are aliens, and this person says, why do you think that? And this person says, I got hit in the head one day, and ever since then I've believed gorillas are aliens. That would be to identify the cause of the belief, but not the evidence for it. And when we ask you in philosophy to say why you believe what you believe, we're not looking for the cause. We're not looking for this kind of explanation. We're looking for the evidence. And to illustrate this person over here will proceed and say, when I said, why do you think that? I wanted you to tell me your evidence, your reasons for your belief, not the cause of your belief. And now you can imagine someone else who comes along and says, well, I also believe that gorillas are aliens. And the reason I do is because I once dissected a gorilla and its anatomy was unlike any other animal I've ever seen. Well, this is, of course, implausible, but at least it's doing the right kind of thing. It's giving evidence for the claim that gorillas are aliens rather than identifying the cause. And that's what the guy over here is going to say. He's going to say, now, that's what I was looking for. He says, it's not very good evidence, or I don't believe you, or whatever, but at least it's evidence for your belief and not a mere cause of it. Okay, here's another example. This person says, everyone from University of Iowa is stupid, and this person says, why do you think that? And then the person on the left says, well, because humans are built in a way that, causes them to group people, and once they group people along any dimension, however arbitrary, they think badly of people who they've marked as being members of the other group. So at this point, the person on the right might say, look, that's not what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for you to give a sort of psychological explanation of what caused your belief. By the way, it's true that humans group people arbitrarily and then think badly of members of the outgroup, often failing to recognize that these groupings are arbitrary. But at any rate, this person over here on the right was not looking for the cause of the person on the left's belief, but the person on the left identified the cause of her belief, didn't offer evidence for it. Okay, so when we say why you believe what you believe, I'm always looking for you to give the evidence for your belief and not just identify the cause of your belief. Now, let's look at what we mean when we say what you believe and why you believe it. Now, suppose this person starts out with the following thought, like, boo Barack Obama. Well, boo Barack Obama is not a belief. A belief can be true or false. A belief is in a proposition, and a proposition can be true or false. Boo Barack Obama cannot be true or false. So if this person is going to be doing philosophy, she needs to do more. So suppose this person then thinks, okay, here's a clear proposition. Obama is the worst president in history. And this at least is something that can be true or false, or it looks like something that can be true or false. So now you're on the road to sort of thinking in the way that philosophy prescribes. So Maroon is now in a position to begin being explicit about why she believes this claim. So step one is to clearly state the belief. So now notice before I had this as a belief, it was like curved things and coming from the head. These kind of bubbles will always indicate a thought or a belief or something mental. And now it's going to be rigid corners and coming from the mouth. This is indicating an explicit statement in language. So the belief has now been stated clearly. Obama's the worst president ever. Now, step 2 is to state the reasons for that belief. And you can imagine when you ask this person to state reasons for her belief, she gives you a whole long list. She says, look, Obama's administration prosecuted more people under the 1917 Espionage Act than all previous administrations combined. His administration oversaw an expansion of and privatizing of domestic surveillance. His administration oversaw an expansion of drone attacks in Pakistan, and they kill innocent people. His administration is responsible for an unlawful health care law, the Affordable Care Act. He's a Muslim. And if any of 1 to 5, and given 1 to 5, given these 5 claims, that means he's the worst president ever. Okay, so you can imagine this person says that. Now, in step 3, what you do is you state your reasons for your reasons. So you imagine someone asks you, well, why do you think number 1 here is true? Why do you think number 2 is true? Why do you think number 3, 4, 5, and 6 are true? And you have to state your reasons. So you can imagine this person says, look, public records confirm that 1 is true. Disclosures from Edward Snowden show that the Obama administration takes a sweeping view of the Patriot Act. That supports 2. There was a report from Stanford University, Living Under Drones, which supported 3. He passed the ACA, therefore 4 is true. Rush Limbaugh hints that Donald Trump used to hint that 5 is true. Since all other presidents except him have been great, it's true that if he's bad in these ways, he's the worst, so 6 is true. And to be very clear, I don't think all of these are true, nor do I think all of these are false. I think some of 1 to 5 are true and some 1 to 5 are false. I think 6 is kind of silly. But otherwise, the point isn't whether I think these claims are true or false. The point is how you go about unpacking a belief, how you go about doing philosophy. You start by stating your belief explicitly. You then give your reasons why you believe that belief is true. You then give reasons for each of your reasons. Now you iterate this until you reach the bottom. And what that means is now you say, well, why do you think public records confirm 1? Did you read it in a reliable newspaper, for example? Did you go look at the public records? Why do you think disclosures from Edward Snowden support 2? Did you read the documents he released? Did you just look at reporting about them? If so, where was the reporting? Why do you believe it's reliable? Why do you believe the Stanford study was good, you could say, when looking at there's a reason for number 3 here. Look at number 4. Since he passed the ACA, it follows that his administration is responsible for an awful healthcare law. Well, that presupposes that the ACA is an awful healthcare law, and the question then becomes, why do you think it's awful? So you have to then give reasons why you think it's bad. Then you get down here, Rush Limbaugh hints, and Donald Trump used to hint that number 5 is true, that is that Obama is Muslim. Well, you'd now need to say why you think that Rush Limbaugh and Donald Trump's hints are reliable sources of information. And you get down to here, since all other presidents have been great, 6 is true. Well, you need to say why it is you think all other presidents have been great. You also need to say why it is you think that 1 to 5 would be reasons to dislike somebody. So maybe you think 5 is false. Maybe you think 5 is false, but maybe you think 5 is true, and you think it's a reason why someone would be a bad president. But somebody else might say, no, being a Muslim is not a reason why somebody would be a bad president. So you're going to need to give reasons to think that being a Muslim means being a bad president. And the same thing goes for the other cases here. Somebody might say, look, even if drone attacks have expanded and innocent civilians are dying, that doesn't indicate that Obama or somebody doing that is a bad president, because you think drone attacks are good and the innocent civilians dying is a fine consequence. There's all sorts of possibilities here. And in order to do philosophy, you don't just state your initial belief and give your initial argument for it. You then investigate every step of the reasons for that argument. You then investigate every step of those reasons, and so on, until you kind of reach the bottom, until you get to a place where your fundamental commitments have been identified. And that's what we mean when we say be explicit in philosophy. So notice the implications of your beliefs, your reasons, and so on. Here are some implications of this person's beliefs. He has to believe that there are presidents. If Obama is the worst president ever, that implies that there are presidents. He has to also believe that Obama is president, or was if we're doing this in the present tense. He has to also believe presidents can be ranked by how good they are. Now, some of these implications are fine. Obama was president, there are presidents, but whether presidents can be ranked by how good they are is entirely unclear, and this person is committed to that. he then has to also define what his central terms mean. So in this context, he would say worst means blah, 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 civilian means blah, blah, blah. So he would take his central terms and define them. That's the idea of being clear. You be clear by being explicit about what you believe and why you believe it, then running through all the reasons for your reasons until you get to the bottom. You then identify commitments that you incur by believing that. That is what else you have to believe if you're going to believe that. And you define your terms. If you do all of that, you'll be very clear about why you believe what you believe. Next up is arguments and logic. These are important parts of the toolkit of philosophy, the methods of philosophy, and we'll talk about those in the next video.